All right, so are you having trouble filling out the saggy middle of your story? Does it feel really drawn out in the center, kind of boring, kind of hard to fill in? Are you worried that you're losing your reader or that the story just isn't good enough because you can't figure out what to put in that middle section? Well, if that sounds like you at all, today I'm going to give you 5 tips for how to fill out the saggy middle of your story. So stay tuned. Do you yearn to make your living from writing fiction? Do you struggle to finish your manuscript due to block, indecision, or lack of confidence in your story? Have you already published books that just aren't getting the sales you'd like? The truth is, the thing that really makes a difference in book sales is not currently being taught in the fiction author space. And it comes from the story level, not the marketing level. Real talk, if you don't get it right at the story level, no amount of awesome marketing is going to make your book a bestseller. Hi, I'm Liesl. I've got 20 fiction books, 4 genres, the USA Today bestseller accolade, and multiple award wins under my belt. So, obviously I've been around the block a few times. I have a lot of readers that follow me from genre to genre, even though conventional wisdom says that's rare. Why? Because my readers know that I know how to tell a story that's going to make them feel something. And if you can master that skill, you can write anything you want for the rest of your life and know it will be well received by readers, which means better reviews, more gushing, more mega fans, and best of all, more royalties for you. Grab your fuzzy slippers and your chocolate of choice. I'm going to teach you how to emotionally engineer your story into the hearts and minds of your readers on purpose. Let's go. Okay, so this worry about the saggy middle is one of the biggest complaints that I get. I hear people say it all the time. I hear authors worrying about it all the time, and they're always asking me, how do I fill in the saggy middle of my story? I know the beginning, I know the end. In some cases, they even know the big plot events, but how do they fill out the rest? How do they fill out either the center between the beginning and end, or fill in between the big plot events that they already have planned out? How do they figure out how to get from one to another? How do they transition, and what should be there, right? A lot of authors don't know how to make their book long enough because they only have the big events and it's not enough for the length that they're looking for. And others, maybe it's not so much about length, they just don't know what to put in their story. So what I will say first is that inside the Legendary Fiction Forge, I teach transformational human psychology. And if you use I call it THP for short, if you use that template for the way human beings go through change to fill in your story, it's like the ultimate storycraft tool, okay? Once you learn that, you'll never struggle with block or indecision or what comes next syndrome where your fiction is concerned. But I'm assuming that most people who are asking this are not inside the Forge yet and haven't learned about transformational human psychology, and it's not something that I can teach you in a 20-minute podcast episode. So, assuming that you have not gotten around to entering the Forge and learning that yet, hint, 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 these are the tips that I would give you for helping to figure out what needs to go in your story aside from what you have already planned, okay? These are my top tips for how to fill out the saggy middle, or you can also use them to fill in transitions between whatever it is you already do have planned for your story, okay? Tip number 1. So maybe grab a pen or a keyboard or something to write these down. Tip number 1 is journal it out. This is my number 1 tool for figuring out what would be best for your story and what is most unique to you, okay? Let your mind wander and brainstorm what could possibly happen. Ask specific questions and then journal on them. So don't just probably ask, how should I fill out the saggy middle of my story? But start with something more specific between 2 events that you have and say, okay, this is where my character's at, this is what's going on, what should they do next? You see what I mean? Just kind of be specific about the questions that you're asking and journal on it. Please don't skip this. Journaling is really powerful and it will really help you figure out what needs to happen next in your story. Just vomit all possibilities out onto your paper or the screen if you're typing it, and then you can pick and choose what's best for you. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, always focus on the emotion. Remember, emotion is what hooks readers. So ask, what is the most emotional thing that could possibly happen in this part? Remember that emotion can be what we think of as regular everyday emotion like happy, sad, angry. But in a story, emotion also takes the form of adrenaline, romance, sex, tragedy, action, scandal, intrigue and mystery. It's anything that gets the reader's heart pumping and makes them feel something and makes them want to keep reading, okay? So focus on those things. What would be like the coolest, saddest, most tragic, most intriguing, most mysterious, most crazy thing that could happen? And, of course, make it appropriate to your story and your genre and everything, but focus on that. That will really help you fill out what's missing in your story. Number 3, dial up the emotion, okay? So don't make something sad in your story. Make it heart-wrenchingly tragic. Don't make someone mad, make them murderous. Don't make something happy, make it full of such joy that people's knees are buckling with the relief of it, okay? Ask yourself what needs to happen, how events need to intensify, and what you can add to ratchet up the visceral desperation of the emotion, right? So very often, I think that we're not always aware of this, but part of the reason that we're having a hard time filling in our story is that we want something very, very emotional. So we might say, okay, well, I want something sad to happen. And then we go through 5 or 10 things that are sad and just none of them seems like it fits. None of them are really, really speaking to us, okay? Well, it's probably because you need to intensify the emotion. Everything you're coming up with, first of all, you're probably coming up with it using your conscious logical mind rather than your subconscious mind. Journaling from tip 1 will definitely help with that. But you also might need to say, okay, what do I want my character to feel? If I want my character to be absolutely heartbroken and you're not coming up with the event that will make them that way, that's why it's not feeling right to you. That's why it's not resonating for you, okay? So ask yourself what kind of emotion you want your character to be feeling, dial it up to 20, right? And then journal on what events could possibly create that emotion in your character, and then you'll have your scenes to fill in that part of your story, okay? Number 4 is kind of piggybacking on number 3, and it's just start with the emotion and then ask what needs to happen to make them feel that way. So really in number 3, I was talking about dialing up the emotion, but you can also start with the emotion, as I kind of already explained, and reverse engineer from there, okay? Number 5. For the actual chronology, as in, I need to figure out what comes next, but I'm not sure how to get them there. Think of cause and effect. Cause and effect is something that most authors do not take very seriously. They'll say, oh, yeah, I understand cause and effect. But as long as it's fairly plausible that what happens next in their story could happen next, and there's not like a gaping hole there, beyond that, they don't really think about it too much. But one thing that I teach is that you need to be really meticulous with cause and effect, because cause and effect is how the end of the story is going to feel inevitable. It's going to feel like destiny for the characters because there's literally no other way it really could have gone, okay? So think about cause and effect, both the inner and the outer. And by that, I mean, obviously what happens in one scene is going to cause what happens in the next scene for the most part. We're talking about events in the plot. But think about the internal arc as well. So ask yourself, okay, what happens in the first scene and how does my character feel about it? Then ask, based on how my character feels, what do they do next? And finally, due to the action that the character took, what happens next because of that action? So what does their action cause to happen in the story, right? Do that all the way through between the big plot events you already have, and you will have worked out how to fill them in, right? It needs to be very cause and effect. So those are the 5 tips I have for filling in the saggy middle of your story, but I'm going to give you one bonus tip that really isn't so much about planning how to fill it in. It's more about writing the in-betweeny scenes. So I have people ask me, okay, but what if there's a scene that just isn't as exciting to write as other scenes? It's something that needs to be there for logic's sake and for continuity of the story, but it's just not as exciting as, say, the climactic moment or maybe the romance scene or, the action scene or whatever the case may be. Number 1, I don't want this to come out harshly at all, so I'm going to be careful how I say it, but not wanting to write a particular scene is actually a sign of inexperience in a writer. And the reason I say that is because, number one, you'll get to a point where you really don't feel that way anymore, and you just want to write your way through the story, and it's not going to bother you that much that some scenes are just bigger than others. And I'm not saying that you can't write them in a particular order, or if you're not very excited to write one scene, you can't write a different one first. I mean, that's fine, and everybody's process is going to be different. But I think you will get to a point once you've done enough writing that this doesn't bother you anymore. The other thing is that you need to focus on the emotion of the scene. I can promise you that if you are bored writing a scene, your reader is going to be bored with that scene too. So if you're not as excited to write it as you want, and believe me, I've been through that too. I have certain scenes, but I've learned to recognize it where I just go, ugh, okay, what is happening in this scene? But when I do that, I recognize that something's off, that I'm not very excited to write that scene. And what I do is I go examine it, and I focus on the emotion. You have to focus on the emotion of a scene. If you're feeling bored, it's because there's not enough emotion being brought out in that scene. And again, if there's not, your reader's going to be bored, and you don't want that. You don't want to lose your reader because the scene was boring, right? So I'm not saying that every scene, every in-betweeny scene or bridge scene needs to be as big as the other scenes are. But if you focus on whatever little nuggets or nuances of emotion are in that scene, it's going to be much more satisfying for you, the author, to write. And by extension, it's going to be much more satisfying for the reader to read because you've focused on that nugget of emotion, and that keeps them paying attention. All right? I promise if you infuse emotion and draw out and ratchet up the emotion in every scene that you write, you will never lose your reader. And even when that's, it's one of those scenes that just isn't that big or that exciting, you will still not lose your reader if you focus on the emotion. So my tip for how to write the less exciting in-betweeny scenes is just pull out the emotion. Sit down, do it very intentionally, you guys. If you just sit down to write it without using any kind of intention, it's just going to feel like it always did, because you're not drawing that emotion out of your subconscious mind and bringing it into your conscious mind so that you're aware of it, right? So if you need to, if you sit down and you just can't figure out where the emotion is in the scene, try journaling on it and ask yourself questions about the characters, like, what is this character feeling? Why are they feeling that way? What is this character trying to accomplish? Why do they want to accomplish it? What happens if they don't accomplish it? What happens if they do accomplish it? I mean, figure out where the emotion of that scene is. And very often the emotion is in the motivation, because, not even very often, it always is, because we always make decisions and do things based on emotion, right? Because there's something that we want, or there's something that we need, or that we need to have happen. And so if you can figure what that is for the character and then bring it across on the page, you'll be golden. All right. So let's go over these one more time, recap. My tips for filling in the saggy middle, or the in-between scenes between bigger scenes, the transitional things between bigger scenes that you already have planned, are these. Number one, journal it out. Let your mind water, brainstorm, get everything out of your subconscious onto the page, and then you can decide what will actually work for your story. You won't be using all of that, but you'll figure out the answer to what you need somewhere in there. Number two, focus on the emotion. Emotion is what hooks readers, and remember that emotion isn't just happy, sad, angry, etc. It's adrenaline, tragedy, romance, sex, scandal, action, intrigue, mystery. I mean, focus on what is going to keep that reader hooked, right? Number three is dial up the emotion, okay? Not sad, but heart-wrenchingly tragic. Make sure that the emotion is big, that it is visceral, that it's something that is deeply, deeply felt by both your characters and by the audience. Number four, start with the emotion. Figure out what you want your characters to be feeling, and then ask what needs to happen in the story to get them to feel that way. And that's how you will come up with your scenes. And of course, you can combine this with journaling. Ask yourself that, and then journal the answer. And trust me, guys, it will work. You will figure it out. For actual chronology, make sure and think cause and effect. This is number 5. And make sure to go with the inner and the outer. So whatever happens in scene 1, ask how your character feels about it. Based on how they feel, how do they react? Based on the reaction, what does that cause to happen in the plot? And that's a great way to figure out how to connect scenes. And understand, you may need to do a lot of those connections. You might need to journal out 10 or 15 steps. And then once you've done that, you'll realize maybe you can cut some of them. But just keep going until you figure a way to connect one scene to another, okay? And in terms of you getting excited to write these less exciting, possibly less emotional in-betweeny scenes, just make sure to focus on writing the emotion. Journal on it, draw it out. Even if it's just tiny little nuggets, if you focus on that and emphasize it, it will be much more exciting for you to write the scene, and your reader will feel it more and you won't lose your reader. Okay? So I hope that's helpful to anyone who's struggling with this, because I know a lot of writers do struggle with this. Before you go, I wanted to say that I am doing another workshop. It's actually next week, November 18th through the 22nd. And I've done character workshops the last couple of months, so I'm changing it up a little bit. I'm actually more just focusing on the secrets of writing six-figure fiction. So the workshop is called How to Turn Every Fiction Story You Write into a Six-Figure Story Step by Step. Okay, so it's just not focused on characters alone. I'm going to talk about fiction in general and kind of like little known psychological hacks that have to do with story psychology, that sort of thing. So if you want to sign up for that workshop, it is free. It's going to be at bit.ly/6FS workshop, as in six-figure story workshop. But I will put that in the show notes so you can just click on it if you need. Please note that this time around, I'm not going to do a replay page. All of the replays will just be in the Facebook group. I've had some trouble with the tech the last couple of times. So I know that not everybody loves Facebook. I always get at least a couple of people asking me, well, what if I don't have a Facebook profile? Unfortunately, you're going to have to, if you want to watch the replays, you're going to have a Facebook profile this time around. And just what I always tell people to do is create one that's kind of fake. You don't have to put your picture on there. You don't even have to use your real name. Just create one just to go to the workshop. And then when you're done, you can delete it. And that way you're not actually, quote unquote, on Facebook if you don't want to be. But it is up to you. But this time around, the replays are going to be only in the Facebook group. So you're going to need that if you can't make it live. If you can make it live, then you won't have to watch them in the Facebook group. Because I'm doing them on Zoom, but the vast majority of people these days can't make it live and end up rewatching on their own time. I know that. So just keep that in mind if you're going to sign up. But again, that's bit.ly/6FS workshop, which stands for six-figure fiction. So 6FS workshop. How to turn every story you write into a six-figure story step by step. That's going to be next week. I'm going to try to keep it to less than an hour, like 45 minutes each day. So I'm just kind of changing up how I am running it, and I'm going to kind of see how it goes. So anyway, just wanted to let you know about that. Hop over and sign up for that if it's something you're interested in. And other than that, have a wonderful week of writing. I hope that you can use some of these tips to fill in holes in your story and places where you're struggling to make things connect. And yeah, other than that, I will see you next week. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. Bye. Thanks for listening today. If this episode helped or inspired you in any way, would you do me a solid and leave me a review? Reviews help other fiction authors find the podcast. You could also recommend it to a writer friend of yours so they can get the same inspiration you got. Remember, you have a story inside you that only you can tell. So get out there and write your soul story, because your readers are waiting for it with bated breath.